Hi, I'm Joe.
And I'm Dave.
And we're the hosts of the Chasing Tommorow podcast, where we bring you stories that delve into the science and spirit behind intriguing people doing extraordinary things.
Welcome to the Chasing Tommorow podcast. This week is episode 46. So this week, we're just going to check in. Both me and Joe, we're going to let you know what we've been up to. I want to congratulate Joe as well, too. 500 days consecutively of running 10 miles a day, also doing 100 push-ups and 100 chin-ups. That is commitment, and that's beautiful. I love that, and I think this is one of the reasons why we're great friends. I love his drive for excellence and his consistency. Myself, this past weekend, I ended up attempting the Trans-Alberta FKT. It was 333 miles, run in under 72 hours. All was good until it wasn't good. I crossed the 100-mile marker at 15 hours and 30 minutes. And about 5 miles later, I started feeling something that we'll talk about. And I ended up making a stop when it came to just deciding that it was a good idea for my health in the city of Calgary. So without further ado, Joe, how have things been the last 500 days?
That's a good question, right? So that started, I guess, December of 2019.
That's a long time ago.
I know. It does. You know, it's hard to tell some days if it was like a true long time or short time. Mm-hmm. But I will say that, you know, throughout the process, you learn a lot about sort of that commitment, mm-hmm. and that follow through, and what do you do when you sort of just don't feel like doing it? So we could talk a bunch about that. And of course, we'll get into your race. You know, I haven't probably fully processed, you know, what did I figure out during this time period? But I'd say the highlight or the headline would be that life is sometimes about, you know, pushing through when you don't want to do something. You know, maybe you don't want to do your homework, you know, you don't want to stay late for work for whatever the reason, you know, you don't want to lace the sneakers up because it's raining out that morning. And I think working through that internal struggle, mm-hmm. and finding a good way to the other side, because sort of almost every time you do that, when you're done, you're sort of happy. You're like, oh, well, I'm really glad I pushed through. Mm-hmm. And I found, maybe not surprisingly, that over time, the physical part became the easier part. Mm-hmm. And it really was that mental part that was like, you know, pulling away from me.
Well, absolutely, Joe. And you like the voices in your head, you know, that would tell you, you know, hey, you know what, it's okay. It's a goofy thing, anyways. What is this all about? You're not even showing up at a race on a Sunday, or, you know, did you end up having some days where the negative voices were a lot louder than the positive ones?
Yeah. It took on average like an hour and a half to run the 10 miles. You know, some days it could be an hour and 20, some days an hour and a half. And sometimes it would take to an hour and 10 minutes till when you're starting to feel good. Mm-hmm. You know, you're like, mm-hmm. you're really pushing through, and you might just, a lot of it was on a treadmill, and you're like, well, you know, I should just sit down, you know, kind of. And whenever I had that thought, I was always like, okay, that's not really a good answer. Like, don't do that, because then it's going to take longer or harder. Mm-hmm. And I guess I felt like, you know, it's because the other thing that I did, it's almost like our mini goals when we do running and races. Mm-hmm. You know, mm-hmm. it was first 100 days, then, you know, like 150, then 200. I didn't set out with 500 as the goal. It kept on building on top of each other. And then it became, you know, the other thing, Dave, is for the most part, not that many people are really interested in what any of us do on a daily basis.
Yeah. We like to think that, you know, what we're doing is really important in God's work, but it's not really, is it?
No. It's for ourselves. Yeah. And in some way, you know, the anonymity is as much the challenge as it is anything else.
Because nobody would know. Right. Nobody would know. But I think there's an accumulated pride that comes along with doing something like that, where, you know, Yeah, there was and I forget the fellow's name again. There was a YouTube video, really popular YouTube video, and it was him giving like a commencement or a graduation speech. And he's I think he was in a Navy SEAL or something rather. And he was like, get up and make your bed every day.
Yeah.
And it's that accumulated pride. It's that those little things that you do. And when you do them, like I just clean my bathrooms. Yep. And I know that sounds ridiculous, and everybody in the world cleans their bathrooms, or if you don't, you should. But you know, there's an accomplishment, and I think those little miniature accomplishments, one after the next, after the next, after the next, you know, kind of break away from that learned helplessness that, you know, we were talking about with the former guest a couple months ago. That learned helplessness where people go, why even bother? The Youre symptoms, symptoms. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that, you know, the other part for me has been over this, we'll call it the past 20 years. I believe in building a personal brand in life, being very explicit, you know, so a brand is sort of
what you stand for.
Exactly. Yeah. And then consistently delivering on that.
Right.
And so in some way, you know, it all contributes to the personal brand that I've been building, you know, as someone you could count on. Like, you know, boy, if you could do that for 500 days and I asked you to do something, you probably would get it done. You know, that physical fitness matters to me, you know, that, you know, how I eat and what I'm going to do for rest and supplementation is all going to matter. So it's an element that I connected into building around how I would like other people to think about me, because that is our sort of responsibility. And then people get to know you for that. And so yeah, the other thing I find sort of cute in a little way is like, if you thought about like telling someone, what did you do with your day? You know, sometimes you don't have much to say, but you can create a life where you have something to say. You know, one year I read a book a week, you know, because I wanted to sort of learn a whole bunch. You know, one year I watched 3 TED Talks a day. It was like 1,000 TED Talks for a year, you know.
Yeah.
One year I ran 365 days, 10 miles a day, kind of, you know, that each of them sort of contribute to sort of getting the best experience you can and making it part of who you are.
A couple of years ago, I ended up making a soup, a different soup that I've never made every day for an entire month.
Yeah.
And, you know, it seemed so stupid at the time, but, you know, it was such a rewarding experience because you were able to, you know, soup theory or whatever you would call that, but it was just such a rewarding experience. And when you talk to people about it, they go, wow, that's interesting. That's so cool. But it just really comes down to a choice, doesn't it?
Yeah. And so the other thing, Dave, that I think we could both say is, you know, we didn't need permission to do any of what we do, that we're sort of have agency over ourselves. And someone might say, oh, well, you know, you were able to do that. But I think it's just about our choice. And I think that's the freedom to live a big life is up to us. And I think we've heard it through our guests. You know, very few of them come from anything of any background and decide, hey, I want to go try and do this. And I like that idea, which is you can sort of write your own plan and then go and execute against it. And for the most part, there's not much in your way.
No, and I think that, you know, you take our 45 guests that we've had on so far, and I think the common denominator with all those 45 guests is that they didn't do easy things.
Right.
You know, they decided to do hard things or challenging things or whatever. And that's, you know, all of us. You know, I can do hard things. It's a beautiful thing. And so what are those hard things? Is it having that difficult conversation? You know, and because, you know, let's take those difficult conversations. You know, we typically come into those conversations seeming to think, oh man, when I say this to this person, it's gonna explode. You know, I'm gonna lose this friendship. This is, you know, 99% of the time, it's okay. You actually feel quite a bit of relief after doing that hard thing. And so, you know, every single one of your days, I guarantee you out of your 500 days, Joe, and this is maybe more of a question, is that, you know, how many of those days did you really, you know, try to convince yourself and talk yourself out from doing, you know, the 10-mile run, the chin-ups, the push-ups, but then, you know, on the opposite end, the reward and the feeling of, I did it. You know, was it greater then? You know, tell our guests a little bit more about that.
Yeah. I often put myself through a little bit of this, like, can you make an argument that's worth anything against doing something?
Yeah.
oh, well, you're a little tired, or it might take some time, or I'm like, there really isn't a good argument. It may be a choice, but not a good argument, meaning that, I think there's a theme emerging in our sport and maybe in life in general. You don't negotiate with your goals. So when you sit down and outline them, be sincere about them, be committed, and then don't start negotiating against it, because it's like, why would you negotiate with yourself? Like, then don't set the goal. Neither of us have any judgment. Like, anyone can do whatever they want. But if you say you're going to do something, well, then you decided, so just do it. And I think that that's the first lesson to learn. Make the goal, don't negotiate, and push through. Easy, hard, or otherwise, doesn't matter, because one, it's how we can achieve more in our lives. It's how we can get, through Maslow's hierarchy, from basic needs to self-esteem to self-actualization, is through this sort of process of finding that at the end of the day, we're not here to prove anything to anyone else but ourselves. We're here to help take care of other people. But in terms of, what it is that we would want to do to measure our contribution, it starts with how we think about ourselves. And this is one of the methods that we can use to sort of tease out of us all that capability that's sitting there waiting to be used, which if you don't go through this, setting the goal and executing against it, you sort of never find that out.
No. And I guess one other thing is, to never really make a decision running uphill. Sometimes the kindest thing that we can do for ourselves is give ourselves a little bit of time. And, were there any times, Joe, where you woke up in the morning and okay, I've got to do my run, I got to do my push-ups, where you just didn't, you maybe even you didn't sleep well, and you said, you know what, I'm going to put it off for a couple hours, because sometimes you feel terrible in the moment, and then you wait 3 hours and you feel like Superman.
Yeah, that's a good strategy. However, most of the time I have a pretty tight day. So I'm getting up at 5:10 and I'm running by 5:22. And, I'm starting work by 8 or 8:30. And so, yeah, maybe on the weekend that could work. I find that there aren't that many people who want to talk to you at 5:30 in the morning. So pretty much your own time. If you wait too much later, someone might say, "Oh, can you do this?" Or "What about that?" And then by the time you realize,
Easterners, because for us that's 3:30 in the morning, and that's not happening.
It could be your 5:30. It's fine.
Yeah, maybe.
But I liked the structure of it very much. It was like pretty much a rhythm. This is, the alarm went off. I got up, brushed my teeth, took care of a few things, got sneakers on, and away I went. I knew, like pretty much after a while, you pretty much know when you're going to be done. And there's some bit of programming to that. The other part I found, since we're not talking about a very hard physical effort, pull-ups are always hard, but the running, that a lot of it was meditative. There'd be some days where it'd be like, oh, wow, I'm done. And then other days you'd be like, oh, wow, this is still going on. But I did get to think about a lot. And for me, I think it was one of the elixirs that I used to get through the COVID experience, because I had a win. I was sort of stuck in the house. I got this treadmill thing downstairs. I might as well just be on there instead of fussing about everything else going on around the world. So, yeah,
that's a really good point. Yeah. I mean, creating those little wins, where, sometimes if you set that massive goal of, hey, I want to run 6 days in the dome and I want to run a certain distance in 24 hours, that's a pretty big goal that's somewhere down the road. But creating those little mini goals, and really you had 3 of them presented to you every single day, and you succeeded all of those, all 3 of those every single day for 500 days. It's a little mini pat on the back. That's good for the human brain, isn't it?
Yeah, the dopamine neurotransmitter was working on pretty much a constant basis, which is good, because that's part of what makes us better. And I do find, as we get older, you can let the knife blade dull if you're not careful, and it happens faster. So when you're 25, the knife blade doesn't dull that quickly. Mitochondria are still producing at a rapid rate. Once you get past 40, mitochondria produce slower. You can trigger them if you're active or active mind, body, or soul. But once you stop, you'll start to see. So days off aren't that helpful. Now, remember, this can be at a modest effort. This doesn't have to be like you're panting, I'm like struggling.
Yeah.
Because it's serving the purpose, right? The purpose is to be active.
Be active, but recover through activity. Yeah.
That's right. And that's a big lesson to learn, because I will sound a little bit rude here, but I don't really like the excuses, which is, oh, that's too hard. Like, no, make it doable. Just make it doable. Like, that's what we should do. Like, it's not like I can't run as fast as Dave. Who cares? So it doesn't matter. That's not where I'm not comparing to you. I'm trying to, for my own self, build this, capability to the level that it should be derived, so that I then know, hey, wow, that's amazing. And I can take on other challenges, because it does bring high level of confidence.
Right. So Joe, after the 500 days, what's next? Where, we kind of get off, both you and I, asking our guests, what's they're chasing tomorrow. I mean, you've accomplished something that you set out to do. I think you set out to do 365 days and just kept it going thereafter. Yeah. I mean, I know you got some races coming up, but what's, any other goals that you want to now take this fitness into and furthering?
Well, so I think that at one simple level, so I don't ever really take a day off from exercise. So that's been for, over 3,000 days or so, maybe 4,000, whatever the number is, where I've exercised at least an hour a day. Because I think that I like to say, you're gonna eat, you're gonna sleep, you're gonna brush your teeth, and you're gonna exercise. You do those every day, and you do them to the level that the body will allow for that day. But that motion is really, really important for me. So I've done it for that long, which is like 9 or 10 years that I'm, so I won't stop that. But what I'll get some freedom back is now, if I want to go for a bike ride, I can go for a ride, if I want to go swim. So I want to still aim for 2 hours a day of exercise. I'll just probably blend it a little bit differently, which will help me set up for an adventure race I'm doing at the end of the month with a couple of guys. And it's about a 36-hour effort. And so we'll, do bike, run, canoe. So I should be in pretty good shape to do all of that. I'm doing 24 hours in the dome, not the 6 days in the dome, in June, to see what I could do running around a track. And to see how this fitness sort of plays out. I think I've built a lot of sort of that mindset of, just stay in the zone for a long time. So I'm pretty comfortable getting ready for that 24-hour. And then, the other thing that will happen is some other goal will sort of creep up, and it'll get interesting, and figure that out soon enough. But feel really good. I'd say at the end of this, I feel great. I'm thrilled that I got to do it, sort of in a way, pretty darn privileged, because my health stayed great. I feel great. The world's starting to turn in a good way. So nothing but, thanks for all that I get to experience in this life. And I just hope that our listeners choose their version, and then also tell us about it, whatever that might be. So
absolutely. And that's a good point, Joe, to our listeners, write to us, let us know your stories. And, one of the things that we talked about before was, we have these world champion runners and athletes and leaders that come on, but, it would be really kind of cool to have like an 85-year-old marathoner on, or to have, an amputee who is doing something, incredible, or maybe not even incredible, but something that's difficult and has a different way of looking about things. So write into us, and we're looking for guests all the time. We're looking for exceptional people, and I think exceptional people are listening. Because exceptional people are interested in people who are living on the razor's edge, like you, Joe.
Yeah. So we're going to transition a little bit to you, and on my transition, I will say this. We all have exceptional capability. The question is, are we going to reach in and try and get a hold of it? It is latent potential that sits inside us every day. The interesting part about it, Dave, is like, imagine you do this 500 days, and if you took a day off, like, where does all that power go? Like, it's still sitting there, right? Waiting to be used. So
absolutely.
And you've
yeah,
been
we talk ourselves into thinking that, yeah, we need that day, but we don't need that day.
Not really. No, we've both learned that active recovery is very healthy. Now, none of us should run zone 4, zone 5 every day.
No.
That's what really actually, I used to do that in my cycling days, could barely walk up the stairs. And, I was just hammering. So I took the bike computer off the bike, so I didn't know what my speed was anymore.
And that probably didn't work out.
No, this is much better. So you've, of course, Canada's struggling still with COVID, and you've been trying to be creative with your goals this year, right? Set out to run across Canada. That got canceled, sadly. And so you constructed this idea to run across Alberta, and you actually had a pretty darn good run. I mean, you got to see.
It was great until it wasn't. You bet.
Yeah, you had beautiful terrain and got in a good run. So tell us a little bit about sort of the setup, and then let's get into how the run went, and then we'll talk about how come it sort of ended a little early.
Yeah, you bet. So my goal really was to run across my province of Alberta on the Trans-Canada Highway, the main highway that arteries its way through the entire country. Because we're not allowed to travel from province to province right now in Canada. There are certain provinces that are doing worse than others when it comes to COVID, and they say, okay, everybody stay put. And this is one of the best ways that we could really resolve this COVID pandemic. And I agree. So I said, well, you know what? I still want to do something hard and challenging and a little bit off the beaten path. I don't know if races are coming back. I always like to center around a race and then, build up my fitness and my mindset and want to do something hard. I don't know. I don't know if races are going to be happening this year up here in Canada. I know they're happening in the States, but not here. And so, yeah, I wanted to do an unsupported run across the province, and I said in record time. There is no record, but I wanted to do something really hard, which was 333 miles in under 72 hours, which is really hard. That's moving at a good pace and consistently, and you just don't take breaks. So I started up in just east of or west of Lake Louise, up in the Canadian Rockies. Anybody who was following my journey saw these beautiful videos and pictures, and that's my backyard. I live in the Canadian Rockies. It's beautiful. People travel from all over the world, and you kind of forget that. Anybody in any region is really beautiful, and you always forget that other people find beauty within your region.
Right.
And so I got running, and I was alarmed at first because I ended up carrying all my food, and I had about 10 liters of water with me, and it was heavy. And I should have done more preparation with that stroller and getting things organized, but I was alarmed by how heavy it was. When you had to go up a bit of a hill, you pushed, and you were pushing hard. So it was a lot harder. But I was really very happy with, how my body was feeling, my physical structure. So, I've been doing a lot of strength training and a lot of fitness. And, I came through the 50-kilometer, 50-mile, 100-kilometer, and then the 100-mile mark really well, feeling strong. And I think my 100-mile time was 15:30, which I was very happy with. And it's a great start to a 333-mile run. About 5 miles after that pit stop, I went to the washroom and took a bit of time getting my stroller organized and refill on water and things. I got going, and I started feeling like a tightening in my chest. It was weird. And then I started feeling this heightened, elevated heart rate when I wasn't running hills. And I was okay. It would heighten, and then it would go down, and then it would heighten, and it would go down. And I've never felt anything like that before. And so I started really pulling back the pace, but that really didn't seem to help. Started getting on the phone with friends, and I came into Calgary thinking, I don't know what to do here, and this isn't like my ankle is stiff or my hamstring is tight. I'm no cardiologist, but you don't mess with your cardiovascular tissues.
Right.
And so this is something that is just rather inconvenient at this time. So, I came, through the city, and it's funny, I was even approaching the main hospital in Calgary, and I thought, you know, this isn't going to work. So I ended up stopping at a heated bus stop, because it was about, you know, it was almost freezing temperatures.
Okay.
And I stopped there, and I, you know, was sad and upset and frustrated. You know, I had a bit of a pity party for myself. You know, I wasn't happy. You know, I didn't do what I said I wanted to do. You know, and I felt like, you know, okay, this is getting in the way. You know, I felt as well too. And I think I said, there was a documentary film company that was following this, and I think I said to the film crew, you know, that I'm really tired of losing. You know, this past year for me was a bit of a rough year. You know, I end up, you know, I separated from my wife, and I lost a lot of good friends, and the common denominator was me, right? And I haven't had a successful result in running and racing for a while. And so, you know, I thought that it can't end like this. I have to have a win. So, you know, I was sad and frustrated, but, you know, ultimately I whispered to my girlfriend, and I said, you know, don't let me make this decision. You know, she just said, okay, you're done. I said, thank you. And so that was it. We made our way over to the hospital. Great doctor, nurse, you know, looked at me. Basically, they ran me through all these tests, would indicate that I had a heart attack. I didn't have a heart attack. And so, but now I'm going to be seeing a cardiologist next week, because they said, hey, this doesn't make a lot of sense to us, but we're emergency room doctors and nurses. We're not a cardiologist. Let's get you in and let's get you checked up. So I'm on the path to hopefully finding what happened. There's always a bit of fear around that, of like, okay, you know, that's pretty serious stuff.
Yeah. Definitely.
You know, it's a hard, difficult conversation to have when you call your mother and ask her, or you tell her what's going on, and, you know, she then gets really worried about, you know, this choice that you're making in your life when it comes to your passions, right? So, you know, I feel good now. I feel, you know, my you know, even a day or so after, I would feel my heart rate spike and drop and chest tightening, which didn't make a lot of sense. Yeah, just it's kind of gone away, but, you know, I'm not running. I'm just gonna rest and relax. And, you know I made the right choice. It's, you know, it was probably the only choice. It wasn't a bad choice. It was the only choice, I think.
Yeah.
I had out there.
Yeah, you know, so thanks. That's always, for all of us, good to hear both sides of one of these experiences. You know, when we cross the finish line with elation, and other times that we don't. That's life, you know. The good news is you and I are still talking, which means you made the right decision, because otherwise, you know, I didn't want to do an episode by myself. So that's for sure.
Right. Yeah. You needed a co-host.
Exactly. So I would go with the, you know, I had a DNF a number of years ago in a race in Tucson. Long story short, the weather got completely unprepared for. Freezing cold rain in the mid 30s, no clothes to really keep me warm. Trail markers got lost. I got lost, wandered in the woods for over 3 hours after being out there for quite many hours, you know, sort of on the way to complete hypothermia. Just randomly someone found me, you know, like just pure luck. If I stayed out there another 3 or 4 hours, who knows what would have happened, you know, kind of thing. They wouldn't let me continue. My body temperature went down to like 95 degrees, 94 degrees. It was like, you know, and all I kept thinking about was, how am I going to tell people I didn't finish a race? Like, and I realized, I'm like, really? How about if I tell them I'm still alive, you know?
Yeah.
Right? I had it like upside down. And
Yeah.
so it's good in some sense for those sort of like us and people who listen, who can get a little bit ahead of ourselves. It's a better game to play over the long term than short term with bad thinking. So good job doing what you did. It's always hard. That doesn't mean that it's easy, but it is the right decision that you made.
Yeah, thank you. And, you know, I feel like it was the right decision. And I even said to friends, I said, give me 12 hours. I'm going to feel bad for myself, and I'm going to
Right.
pout and cry and complain and things. But then, one of my best friends, he sent me a text and he said, don't ever let your successes get to your head, but don't ever let your failures get to your heart. And yeah, I mean, what do you
Good
say?
one. It's perfect.
I've had success, but I've also had failure, and it's in my DNA that I'm going to go out and do things that are really uncomfortable and hard and challenging, and and I'm probably going to fail 2/3 of the time. But it's in my DNA that I'm not gonna stop. I certainly want to be. I want to be the man in the arena, right?
Yeah, if you think about it, pretty much, if we pick sport as the comparison, whatever the sport is, really, there's only ends up being one winner. Everyone else is a loser. Well, that's not true at all. They're not losers at all, right? They're competitors.
No.
Right? That it just happens to be that's the way the system scores, but it doesn't have anything to do at all with the effort, the accomplishment, the integrity of the preparation, of all of the elements of the experience, like you had, which we should talk about for a few minutes, because we got to stop turning it, upside down and get it right side up, which is, it's about a journey. It's about the participation. It's about bringing yourself to it. And then, that's what you've done. And I don't know if it matters if you win another 20 races or 0 going forward, but what matters is that you'll put, the Dave Proctor effort into it, and you'll get some great accomplishments as a result. So, like, you got to do something that's pretty cool. Like, I'm sort of curious. So you're running along, I got to talk to you a couple of times while you're doing it. We videotaped a little bit, and but it's like a major highway, so you're right there. Like, what was that like? Was it distracting, noisy, scary, being on the side of a highway going across Canada? How'd that feel?
I wasn't really scared until the evening, and I'll get to that in a second. But but that's also not a very good measure, because I don't really get scared easily of things. And so whenever I was talking to people, on the phone, they were like, "Ooh, it sounds like that, transport truck is right beside you." And I'm like, "Yeah, it is." And if I get hit, I'm not going to look, very pretty. And but my head doesn't go there. And maybe that's also why I take on challenges like this. Is my head doesn't go, well, what if it doesn't work? It's always so. Maybe I have a risk portion of my cerebral cortex that isn't really wired right, that will allow me to go onto a highway like that and take those risks where maybe I probably shouldn't. That doesn't mean I'm not going to do that moving forward, because a lot of those goals are presented on highways like the Trans-Canada Highway. But I think the one thing I won't do again here, Joe, is run at night. Everything's pitch black. You have these big transport trucks driving up. You have a really hard time understanding how close to that white line they are. They're coming up, and then my light, I've got a couple lights blinking and whatnot, and they're curious and wondering. Typically, I think when people are looking at something, they drive towards it. So at night, some vehicles were coming closer. I was disoriented as well too, because you don't really see very well. So a lot of the off ramps, I was running up, and I was like, okay, where am I? And I thought a couple of times, I'm going to get lost in the middle of the night. And this is only on day 1. What about day 2 and day 3? And so running at night on a highway with a baby stroller, I don't think I would ever do it again, even with my messed up risk-taking cerebral cortex.
Well, that's good. So see that you learned something. There are plenty, actually, Jamil Curry and the Aravaipa guys have the Cocodona 250 going on this week, through Arizona, which you can do through the night, but you're off trail or you're on a dirt road. You're not really combating any big 18-wheelers that are coming your way. So there are plenty of hard challenges. You can go out there and you can go through the night, or your 48-hour challenge around a track. But yeah, maybe major highways, that's probably a good idea to stay away from them.
Yeah, you make a mistake, you get hit by a vehicle, it's not that you roll an ankle.
No.
No, you're dead.
Yeah, pretty much.
And yeah, Joe, you're a father. I'm a father as well too. We have responsibilities to people here in this world, and yeah, it wasn't a good choice. Now that I was out on the highway running throughout the night.
Yeah, so that's good. You learn that, and in some way, it's an interesting experience because you have to sort of really, because you own that experience inside your head, so that's not going away. You're not going to sort of like fumble into that one again.
No, absolutely. Yeah.
And there are Canadian, trans US kind of runs, but you can stay off of the main roads, which does make it a whole bunch safer, even though then, safety is, I think it's this risk and consequences thing we've talked about before. The risk in that situation is high and the consequences are high. So
yeah, you bet. And as well too, if I was going to be running on day 2 and day 3, I was thinking about that on day 1 with, not seeing as well and just having one light shining in front of you, you're disoriented. And it's not necessarily the trust during the day. I'm trusting those vehicles and staying over. But on day 2 and day 3, would I be really trusting myself on staying on my side?
Oh, sure. Yeah, because you could fall asleep while you're running.
Yeah, and you run right into them, and they're not waiting. It's not their fault.
No.
Yeah, so it was, a lot of the time you don't think of these things before, and who knows, maybe in the middle of the night on day 2 or day 3, I would have just said, okay, I'm gonna stop and wait here until the sun comes up because this was unsafe.
Yeah, so that's good. So like in some way we end up with a good outcome of sorts, right? And so you got in about 110, 120 miles. That's a great workout.
Oh, it's a great workout. And the great news is, Joe, is that my legs are fine. So, last time I ran 100 miles, I was stiff and sore and achy. And so it's a proof of fitness. So that's good. I was prepared for that. And that's a good sign going into, backyard this year and 24-hour racing and on and so forth. So I'm pretty eager to use more moving forward. Yeah.
That's cool. And so let's talk a little bit about, your plans that are coming up. And what's on your horizon for of course you're going to go to the doctor. That's cool. You'll probably take a few days off but then get back at it. And then what's your next race plan?
Well, I've got a 24-hour race out in Victoria, July 3rd, I think it is, July 2nd, July 3rd. And I just don't know. I don't know if that's going to happen. Right now, Alberta, up here in Canada, is leading almost even the world, maybe a little bit behind India when it comes to percentages and cases, and it's spreading like gangbuster up here. And I've got my little theories of why. There's different ideas and cultures around the world, and a lot of Albertans are going to anti-mask protests and on and so forth. It's like, oh, what are we doing here? I get it that this is difficult, but let's all do our part, right?
Yeah.
And so in Canada right now we're limiting traffic from province to province. So this race is in the province next to me, and I don't know if I can get there. Now numbers could drop. Governments could, lift restrictions. I'm just going to train for it like I'm going to be running it. If they don't have it, they'll probably have a virtual 24-hour race, which, I've kind of had it up to here with virtual races. I'm kind of cooked when it comes to that. And then I've got a 100-mile in September. It's a trail 100-mile, and then I've got Biggs. So Biggs Backyard is in October. Now, Joe, if you would have asked me, 8 months ago, 12 months ago, are we going to be in this position? I would think that, we're going to be fine. We're all going to be traveling and doing our thing. You know what? I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get down into the United States with travel restrictions up here in Canada. I know we've talked a lot about, with other backyard racers all over the world, and they don't know if they're going to be able to get into Tennessee.
Yeah.
So I'm going to try my very best. That's my A race this year. it seems like that's where all the cool kids are going. I want to go hang out and at least pretend to be maybe a cool kid, and go and do my best down there. So yeah, that's about it. Go and see to my heart health, number one. And hopefully they say, get out there, keep running, monitor things. And if it comes back again, then let's take it seriously. And hopefully it doesn't.
Well, there's a lot of future potential in Dave Proctor. We all know that. Reminds me of a U.S. Speed skater, Dan Jansen, years ago. He went Olympic after Olympics, and lost, and he lost, and he fell, and he lost, and he never quit. And then I think it was the 5th time through, he won the gold medal. He was always the best, but he let it get in his head, and but he endured. And so yeah, I think that, look, we'll hope for the best with the health. I'm sure that it was most likely an anomaly of sorts. You'll keep going. You have fitness that's extraordinary. You have great mindset. So I think it'd be fun to see what happens at Bigs this year. We got quite a few great people. I think, the US, we're doing pretty good with the vaccines. The percentage cases are going down. So I think we'll be okay having people come visit. I think we'll be able to share vaccines outside the US. So hopefully Canada will get some, and we'll get more people. It actually, it improves pretty quickly. Once you start to get a really pretty fast pace. I think we went from like the state of New York 1 month ago had like 6.5% infection rate, and now it's under 1.5% 1 month later. So you can get it taken care of pretty quickly.
Right.
With some good concerted efforts. So we'll help your Canadian brethren decide to really press. Have you been vaccinated yet?
Yeah, been vaccinated myself because I'm a healthcare worker. Got vaccinated about 2.5 weeks ago, and it was a really great process. You get ushered through a big convention center, and it seemed like everybody was pretty eager to get their shot. I got the Pfizer. Have you had yours, Joe?
I did as well. Yeah, I got my second dose. I think it was like end of March, like March 29th or something like that. So yeah, there's a nice feeling of freedom and protection that you have with it. This is amazing technology and amazing companies that developed this. Beautiful. And so I'd encourage every one of our listeners to get the vaccine, because it does really take a burden off of you when you do it, and helps you, it helps people around you. So it's a very good idea.
Absolutely it is. Yeah, no doubt.
And so we're working on our next guest. We have a couple of good ones lined up for the month of May. And of course, we're always, in conversations with some really intriguing people. It was cool to see Alexander, with our last one. He was amazing results, and he's gotten some really nice coverage in the ultra running world. So that's fun to see.
Absolutely. And what a great guy. I mean, his brother showed up and relayed all the English back to him, and it was great. Maybe let's leave it here, Joe, where we ask our audience to what's your chasing tomorrow? Send us a message, and let us know what's next for you guys. What are you doing to push yourselves and challenge yourselves, and especially in this pandemic time? We're all doing our best. We're trying our best. Let's hope that somebody out there hears about this 500-day challenge and they go and do 501. What do you think, Joe?
I'd love to hear about it. That would be awesome. And as I always say in our closing, listen to us on any of the podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and that. Leave a review. You can always follow us on Instagram. You can direct message us on Instagram at Chasing Tommorow. And we look forward to going on this journey with you. So Dave, glad you're feeling good, and I'll be talking to you shortly.
Yeah. Great seeing you, Joe.
Take care, Dave.
Take care.